Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Zoe and I'm a new mama of one. So today's video is going to be all on breastfeeding essentials and must-have products. So as a new mum, there were a lot of products that I didn't know that I would need, especially for feeding. I have been exclusively breastfeeding ever since Nate has been born, with the occasional bottle, and we do pump occasionally, which I will show you all those products that I use to help with that. But there's so many products out there, and breastfeeding in itself can be a really hard thing to achieve. A lot of women do have struggles with breastfeeding. There's lots of different feeding issues out there. I definitely, I had a few issues, but I was very lucky that I was personally able to breastfeed and my son was able to latch. But I know that there are some difficulties out there. So I want to show you some products that maybe can help you in your feeding journey and help you just establish breastfeeding a bit easier. Now really, when you think about it, breastfeeding, all you need is yourself and your baby to breastfeed. But these products that I'm going to show you today are going to help you in your journey, and they're going to make your life a little bit easier. So my first essential product that I used was actually in pregnancy. I went to the chemist and I purchased some little syringes. So they're not the standard syringes, they're the really small ones. I think they were 3 or 5 mil. So you can go to your chemist and just ask them for some syringes and let them know that it's specific for expressing your colostrum. So colostrum is the substance that you get from, I believe, 20 weeks of pregnancy. And you will have it for the first week usually until your milk comes in to feed your baby. So it's really thick, like honey-like substance. It's like a golden color and it's really rich with really good antibodies and lots of nutrients. It's really good for a baby. And the reason why you would express some colostrum is not only to give your baby a little bit more, because you don't have, as I said, you only get it for about a week until your milk comes in. But there could be feeding issues. Your baby might not latch, or you might be separated from your baby if you've had a traumatic birth and you can't physically feed your baby from the breast when they're first born. So you can have someone else feed them your colostrum that you've already expressed. So I started expressing colostrum towards the end of my pregnancy because nipple stimulation can cause contractions, so you don't want to do it too early. I think I started around week 36, 37. So I used, I think, 5 or 6 syringes to collect my colostrum, and all you do is express, and you only get like a few drops. I think the first few times I did it, I got nothing, and then once I perfected my expressing technique, I started to get a couple of drops, and then I started to fill the syringes. So I was really lucky when Nate was born. He didn't have any latching issues. We weren't separated for very long. We were separated for about an hour, but he was okay with that. And then he breastfed straight away. So I assumed straight away that we didn't need to use the colostrum, but we did end up using all of it. I think on his 2nd or 3rd day of life, we were still in the hospital because I had a C-section and I was recovering. And Nate was just so unsettled. He was feeding constantly, which is quite normal for a breastfed baby. They just cluster feed a lot in the beginning. And my milk hadn't come in yet, so he definitely wasn't getting enough. He was a big boy, so he needed more than the average baby. And so my husband dashed home, he got the colostrum from the freezer, and then the midwife prepared it for Nate, and she fed him through the syringe. So he took all the colostrum down, and he actually wanted more food. He wanted to still breastfeed after that. He was very hungry. But for me personally, it was really great because it just meant that I was able to give him a little bit more of that really good stuff. He did also end up needing to use a little bit of formula because he was dehydrated, unfortunately, but it just meant that he had a little bit more of that really great colostrum. So that's something that you can start now if you're pregnant and you're watching this. Definitely go to your chemist and try to get some syringes. And if you're unsure on the expressing technique, you can just look it up. There's lots of videos on YouTube that I found really helpful. So the next product that I used for breastfeeding was a nipple balm. So when I was in the hospital, I think the first day of breastfeeding, I was like, oh, this isn't painful. I don't know why everyone complains about it. It feels fine. And then second day it hit me and I realized that I was really raw and sore and it just didn't feel very good. Each time he latched on, I cringed a fair bit and I ended up getting some blood blisters. It wasn't very nice. So that's quite normal in the beginning when they're learning how to latch and you're just like getting used to having a baby just sucking on them constantly. So having a really thick nipple balm is so important. I would just lather them up with nipple balm. Another thing when choosing a nipple balm is making sure that you get an all natural one. So myself, I love to get all natural ingredients in things. I prefer that over, you know, the standard stuff. And I didn't realize how great it was until I started using it, because on the side of the nipple balm container, it said that I didn't have to wash it off each time my baby fed. And I didn't realize how fantastic this was until we started doing that. So the fact that like little babies, they cluster feed all the time. You don't really get too much of a break unless they're sleeping. So the fact that I didn't have to constantly wash this nipple balm off was great, because if I had to do that, I probably would hardly ever have the nipple balm on my nipples, and they would probably be even more raw being constantly washed. So I would definitely go and do that again for my next baby, and I'd recommend that you would go out and get some sort of natural nipple balm so that you can keep it on a bit longer and keep everything moisturized. So another thing that I use for that is coconut oil. I just use an all natural coconut oil. I keep it in like a little tub on my nightstand, and I would use that if I didn't need something super thick, if I just wanted them to be a bit moisturized. And the good thing about using coconut oil, it is antifungal, antibacterial, all that stuff. So it can help with keeping things like nipple thrush away, and yeah, it helps with like the baby's mouth, keeping it clean and everything, and making sure that they don't get like thrush in their mouth either. The next thing I used in the hospital were nipple shields. So nipple shields are these little silicone covers that you put directly over your nipple, and they have these little holes over the nipple part so the milk can actually come through. So what it does is it sort of acts as like a barrier for your nipple, and you can use it for either if you're having like a bit of pain and you just need a bit of relief like during a feed and you don't want them like directly on your bare nipple if you're a bit sore. But it can also be used if the baby isn't latching properly. Sometimes they find it easier to latch onto a nipple shield because it's a bit firmer. But of course you need to probably speak to a lactation consultant of some type, or a midwife if you're at the hospital, about that, to make sure that you're not constantly using them. Because if you're using nipple shields, you definitely do want to start to wean them off of that so that they get used to just breastfeeding without the shield. So I packed these in my hospital bag. I wasn't sure if I was going to need them at all, but they were like $10, so I just went and bought them. And I did end up using them for, I think, the first month. Definitely for a few weeks there, I was using them a fair bit. As I said, my baby, he did latch straight away, so we didn't have an issue there, but I did get quite sore, and the midwife did say that I could use them if I wanted to help just with that soreness. And it did, I used it, and it created that barrier between, you know, his mouth and my bare nipple. It just gave me a bit more protection, and it did definitely help. The other plus side with that, using it at the start, was the midwife said, make sure you check the inside of the shield to see if there's any like milk droplets, and then that way you know your milk's coming in and you're definitely like, your baby's getting something. So in the beginning, it can be really scary to know if your baby's actually getting anything at all. And you know, they're so tiny, you don't want them to be losing weight. So you want to make sure you're actually feeding them. And so that's something that I did check, and I did end up seeing those little droplets inside the shield. So I knew that my baby was getting some milk. So that was a bit of a relief. Now for nursing clothes, I wouldn't go overboard, but I definitely would buy a couple of things that are specific for nursing, especially in the beginning when you're going to be nursing constantly. Maybe a couple of t-shirts with like the little flaps that you can just easily breastfeed in instead of like pulling up your entire shirt. But you can certainly get away with like lots of different clothes that aren't actually nursing clothes that you can turn into nursing clothes. So I wore this specifically for this video so I can show you today. So I'm not even wearing a bra. I'm wearing a t-shirt and then like a strappy top over the top of my t-shirt. So when I want to breastfeed, all I do is pull this down and then I pull my t-shirt up. and then I'd pull that down to breastfeed, obviously, and I had this like nice little opening there to breastfeed in, but my tummy's covered and I don't have anything else showing, so it's really easy to breastfeed. If you layer up your clothes, just play around with your wardrobe. There's lots of different things that you can do to make breastfeeding a lot easier. Okay, so my favorite, absolute favorite breastfeeding product is the Silicone Pump. So it's not your traditional pump. It's not like a hand pump or an electric pump. What it does is it's like a suction. So you pull back like that part, and then you position it over your nipple, and then you fold it back over, and then you sort of like press on this part and it suctions on. And so what happens there is it actually pulls in the nipple, it draws it in just like it would in your baby's mouth. So when you're breastfeeding, your nipple actually goes all the way to the back of their mouth. So your nipple sits like all the way down here, and then the fact that it's like suctioned on and this part presses on your milk ducts, that's enough just to get the milk flowing. So I've used this so many times and I've collected so much milk. It doesn't actually, there's no like sucking motion, so it doesn't trigger your body to make tons of milk, and it doesn't collect a ton, so it's not like if you use an electric pump you're going to get a lot more. But this is really good for just collecting that little bit of extra milk so you don't end up engorged. I collected a ton actually in the beginning, and I wish I used this more because I probably would have been able to build up more of a milk stash in the freezer. But I still use this every single day. So I find it best to use this when Nate has had a feed. So he'll feed on one side, and then like I'll burp him, and I usually put him down and he'll play for a bit and let that milk digest for 10 minutes. Then he's ready for the next side. He's never been a baby that just is like ready to go to the next side straight away. So in that time, I pop this on the side he's just fed on, which is the best thing to do, I think, because he's already got all my hormones going for breastfeeding, and it just catches like that letdown really quickly. And I think just the fact that he was like just sucking on the nipple, it's already stimulating it, and it's already like ready to spray some more milk out. So if you're using this, another thing that you can do is reposition it as well as you're collecting milk. So I will position it over a certain duct. It might spray out and collect a lot of milk, and then when it stops or it's just like dribbling out, I'll then move it around to another duct, and I'll keep like turning it around, and I'll just re-suction it until it seems like I've drained myself completely, and there's like no more of that like spray letdown happening. So I've heard lots of mums use this and say that it doesn't work for them. It definitely took me a few goes to get it going as well. So when I first did it, I wasn't suctioning it enough. So you got to make sure your nipple is like really pulled back into this thing, and you do have to play around with the different positions because you're going to get more milk over certain ducts. Some ducts I will suction it over and I won't get anything at all, and then I'll move it slightly and then it'll just like spray out. So yeah, make sure you get the position and the suction right. Alright, so they are the main breastfeeding essential products, must-haves that have worked for me, and some things that haven't worked for me. Now I want to talk about pumping and bottles. Now all this will also help with breastfeeding. So if you're planning to maybe go back to work or just give your baby an occasional bottle, then listen up for these next products that I'm going to show you. So I'll start with the bottles. So when you are breastfeeding but also giving the occasional bottle, it's really important which sort of bottle and bottle nipple that you choose. So you want to make sure you get a slow flow nipple, because most traditional bottle nipples, they'll just like leak out. As soon as you tip it upside down, the milk just starts coming and the baby just has to like swallow. Whereas with their breastfeeding, they have to suck for the milk to come out, so they're like more in control of it. So if you get a slow flow one, it mimics like the breastfeeding, because some babies might take a bottle and then realize, hey, I don't have to work hard, I don't even have to suck, the milk is just coming out, and they really enjoy that because they're hungry and they just want the milk, and then they might refuse the breast later, and you definitely don't want that if you want to continue like your breastfeeding relationship. So I thought that I would go out and get a bottle specific like for breastfeeding. So I did some research and looked into the different ones on the market, and there are a few different ones for breastfeeding, but I went with the Minby bottle. So this is what it looks like. That's the bottle nipple. So it's a bit different to your traditional one. I'll show you a normal one. So this one came with my pump. So that's like a normal traditional bottle nipple. And this is the breastfeeding nipple. So that's the Minby brand. So it's so different. This one is softer as well, which is more like a natural nipple. This one's like really hard and firm. And the way that like the nipple sits up, it's so different. So this is actually how your nipple looks in your baby's mouth. So it's like fully drawn in. And this is also how you feed them. So the bottle nipple is actually sitting up a bit, so it does make them like suck more. And it also has a slow flow opening, so that it's not like spraying out or anything. They actually have to suck to get the milk out. So if you get a breastfeeding nipple with your bottle, then your baby's more likely to take the breast after using the bottle if you're going back and forth. So that's what I would recommend if you're going to be breastfeeding. Otherwise, like a standard bottle is probably going to be fine if your baby takes it. But I know some babies are funny with bottles and bottle nipples, so you might have to experiment and see what your baby likes. But we've used this since 6 weeks. I'm a working mum, so I knew I was going to go back to the office at some point. So I definitely wanted to make sure my son was taking a bottle. And I believe between 6 and 8 weeks is when you can start doing that, so that it doesn't interrupt like your breastfeeding journey, and like making sure that their latch is right and all that. So that's why you want to wait a little bit before you introduce one, but don't wait too long because then they might refuse it. So yeah, we started at 6 weeks and that worked well. When he first started taking it, he was really unsure, and I think the milk was still a bit too fast for him. He would choke a little bit on the milk, like gag a bit and cough it up. But eventually he got used to it and he's fine now with that. And we've just always used the Minby bottle, and that's worked for us. Now for pumps. So I only have one electric pump. I purchased the New Beginnings pump. This is it. It's quite small. So this is the device with the buttons. And then it is attached on a tube to the actual pump. So that's what goes onto your breast to collect the milk. This would attach to the bottle, so you'd take off like the top part here and attach it to your bottle, and then you collect the milk that way. I actually really like this pump. It says only a single pump. I knew I wasn't going to be like exclusively pumping. If you're doing that, then you probably want to get like a double pump. But I don't use this all that often, so a single pump was fine for me. They're cheaper as well. And the other thing about this pump is that it is, you charge it and then you can use it anywhere. So you don't have to just plug it, you don't have to plug it in a wall and like sit there next to the pump to use it. So I know a lot of women have said that that is like a downside to a pump, that you have to plug into the wall. It's like anywhere you go, you have to make sure that there's a power point there to use to pump. So the fact that I can charge this and then throw it in my handbag if I need to, and then pump wherever, like if I'm going to work, I'm going to go to the office, I can just charge it at home. When it's fully charged, I throw it in my handbag, take it to work, and then I can just whip it out and pump. So that's really handy, and I would definitely look into something like that, you know, instead of those ones that you put into the wall. So that's the New Beginnings pump. I found it pretty good. It's, I think it was about 100, 150, somewhere between there. So it wasn't like a super cheap one, it wasn't a super expensive one, it's sort of mid-range. And I've just found it worked well. But of course, if you're exclusively pumping, you might want to go and get like a hospital grade one. I know you can hire them as well, so talk to your hospital and or maybe the pumping companies and see what options you have if you can't afford one, because they are quite expensive. So they are all of my essential breastfeeding must-have products. The only thing I didn't mention today actually was a nursing pillow. The only reason why I didn't mention it is because I only use my nursing pillow at the start when my baby was a newborn. Now that he can like sit up and stuff, he sort of just sits in my lap and drinks. We don't really use it that often. He doesn't really like lying down with me cradling him that much anymore. So I use it occasionally. I just got like a standard nursing pillow. I know you can spend a lot of money. There's some really expensive nursing pillows out there. but the standard one will do the trick. It is really handy in the beginning because you are nursing a fair bit. And you know, your arms can get sore if you're like constantly holding them. Another thing that I found really helpful and made it a bit more comfortable when I was breastfeeding at the start was a comfortable chair in our living room. So we actually bought a rocking chair that also doubles as a recliner. So you don't have to spend a ton of money. We wanted that anyway for our lounge room, so we just bought it now because, you know, it was a great time to have a chair like that. And the fact that it was a rocking chair as well was really handy because I could like rock Nate to sleep when he was being fussy. And yeah, so I spent most of my life sitting in that chair in the beginning with my nursing pillow. That was really handy. But now that he's older, we don't really need all those things. He nurses so quickly. He's like a 5-minute nurser and he's done. So I don't really need anything to help me feel a bit more comfortable in a 5-minute period. But as I said, it is really handy in the beginning if you do want to go out and buy those products as well. So I hope you liked my video. I hope that those products help you decide what you need. And as I said, everyone's bodies are different. Some of these products might not work for you and some of them might be amazing for you. So play around with it. Don't go and spend a whole ton of money when you're pregnant because you don't know what you're going to be doing. You might not even end up breastfeeding. It might not work for you. So just maybe buy some of the smaller essential products and then see how you go and maybe get some of the other products later on if you feel you need them. I hope you liked this video. Please hit subscribe to see more videos like this one.